Alrighty, welcome back everyone. Gonna try something new out and do a voiceover style. Just let me know how this goes and if you want me to do live audio or voiceover, whichever one works best. So today we are going to be working on the rear end of the car, installing some axles, which we're pulling out here now. The rear gear, putting that all in the housing and putting it all together for you. Sorry for the delay for the video. Been busy with a whole lot of stuff in life going on. Yes, my nails are painted. Got in a relationship and then out of it, so the ex wanted to do that, long story short. But here we have two axles for the Ford 9-inch housing. The rear end has a 3.5 ratio gearing in it. I've done some math on it, seeing, what this rear gear is going to do. It might change in the future. Really don't know, just gonna have to play it by ear, see how I like it, see how it drives. Now the axles that I got, they were all sold out of the pre-cut options for the 52-inch rear end housing. So I had to get two cut-to-fit axles, no big deal. I took those to the shop and got those cut down. And in a minute here, we are going to run to the store and grab some hardware for the housing, because it did not come with all the hardware. And we're going to go also grab some oil, some sealer, and a couple other odds and ends to help get this project along the way. Alrighty, we are back. I had a little more footage, but the camera overheated and some of the footage got corrupted. But here we got our rear gear oil, a pump to help put it in, because the car being so low I can't just tip the bottle. All of the hardware we need that, the kit did not come with, like it should have. A little bit of RTV, and a quick bit kit. Now I only got this kit for that one 3/8 drive bit, because I don't know where mine is for my impact. Only reason I got it. Let's get to work. Alrighty, so here we are starting to install the studs to hold in the rear gear. They go inside the housing facing outwards, and the nuts will go on the outside. So here I'm just kind of finger pressing them in just to hold them in place. You don't have to do this, you can go one by one. This way you can just kind of visualize how everything's going to work out. And we'll put them in one by one, move on to the nuts. With these, they are splined, so in a minute, once we get all these in, I'm going to set the nuts onto the stud and then send it with the impact driver just to seat them into the housing. Same thing you would do for like a lug nut stud on the wheel hub. You would just set it in place, hammer it down till the bottom's out, and that's it, the stud's in place. It's obviously not super tight as one of them fell right there, but it's all good. And here I am just getting the socket and impact driver ready to seat these studs into the housing. I don't have any of it ready yet because I'm a moron and always forget to prepare. So we're just going to go ahead and thread some of the nuts onto the studs, because if I just did them one at a time, all of those studs would fall out from the impact driver, because I only finger press them in just enough to hold them in place. And now with all of those studs seated properly into the housing, we're just going to prep the surface for the RTV. I'm just going to do this with a little bit of brake clean, a little bit of steel wool, just get it all nice and cleaned up. There was a little bit of rust buildup just from shipping and storage, so we're just going to clean that off, make sure it has a good nice seal and binding to the metal of the housing. And now that we've scrubbed some of the rust with the steel wool, we're going to hit it with some brake clean again. Take a dry clean rag and just wipe away some of the rust residue. Camera decided to unfocus here for some reason. It'll fix itself in a second. But you just want to make sure there's no dust, particulate, rust, oil, anything on there, or else the RTV isn't going to bind, isn't going to seal, and it's just going to be leaking gear oil everywhere. So just make sure you thoroughly clean all of your prepping surfaces before laying down any RTV. And so now we are going to start laying down the RTV. I'm sure if you're doing anything like this, you know very well how tricky RTV can be, just trying to squeeze it out very evenly and getting a nice bead going. Just make sure it's always on the inside of the stud. You don't want to go around the stud on the outside, or else there's a good chance it'll leak around it. So just make sure you get a nice good bead, nice smooth. I think I was doing about a 1/4 of an inch thick and tall, and just trying to get as smooth as possible. Squeezing it out of this tiny little thing, real killer on the forearms because you're just squeezing as hard as you can. But just get a nice good bead, take your time, don't mess up, and you'll be good to go. And right here you can see a number one mistake of what not to do. Make sure you keep anything out of the RTV. I am terrible, and I let my forearm dip into the RTV on that side, and as you can see, it kind of smushed it. So we'll just go back over that and lay a little bit more, make sure we build that bead back up, or else that would have been a guaranteed spot for it to leak. For joining, just kind of dip the RTV into a pre-existing bead and squeeze a little bit out, almost like you're welding. Just kind of dip it in, pull it back out, and it'll get a good seal. And just for extra safe measure, just in case it were to start leaking somewhere else, we're going to go around all of the studs as well. I know I said earlier go on the inside, but why not do both? Just be safe. And there we go, looks terrible, but it'll get the job done. So now that we have the RTV laid out, we're gonna come back, let it sit for a little bit, cure up a tiny bit, and then we're going to lay the rear gear onto the studs and onto the housing. When you're doing this, just make sure you line up all the bolt holes right, make sure you don't smear any of the RTV accidentally, and also make sure the surface of the rear gear itself is cleaned off just the same. Use some brake clean, a little bit of steel wool, and a clean dry rag. Make sure you get all the oils and rust off. So this one didn't go on super smooth. I had to kind of finagle it a little bit. That's just because the studs weren't completely set, and some of them might have been off angle. I might have been dropping it on a weird angle, but we got it on. So I'm going to be using a little bit of RTV. It is just blue, the bottle's red, but it's just the medium strength. I don't plan on opening this up every other weekend, so I'm not too worried about how hard it's going to be to take off if I need to. I just want to make sure that none of the nuts are going to come loose and it starts leaking, or it comes loose on the highway and I drop the rear gear out doing 85. So now that the RTV's on, we're going to just get the first couple threads onto the nuts and studs. I'm going to be using an impact driver on those outside ones I can reach it with, just to kind of speed it up. And now, when I first set in the studs, they weren't completely sat down against the housing, so I'm just also going back over and really just hammering down, making sure that they're all set and bottomed out into the housing. And as you're going to see as we're doing this, it's going to be setting the rear gear against the housing as well, and you're going to see the RTV squishing out from the sides. It's just going to be filling in all of the tiny little cracks and crevices that it wasn't before, and give it that nice good seal. And right here you won't be able to reach these bottom ones unless you have some sort of swivel socket or anything like that. I didn't have one at the time. So we're going to come back over those with just a simple wrench and just make sure they're real good and tight. and now we're actually going to have to run back into town and get some more hardware I forgot to grab the first time. So while we're driving, I will put a timestamp if you want to skip this. This is just going to be updates on what we're going to be doing, what's in the future, what's been going on, this, that, and the other. So as far as the delay, as I mentioned in the intro, just a lot of life things been going on, getting a new job, relationship happened and then ended, some family matters that I had to deal with, and it's just been taking a lot of time, and nothing happens without money. Money's just been kind of COVID hasn't helped anyone, and it certainly hasn't helped me all that much. I ended up having to get surgery on my arm a little while ago, so I've been paying bills on that, paying off student loans, other bills going on, building this PC that I am currently recording and editing on. So it's just been a little rough, trying to get a little bit better with it, but for future plans, I think the next thing that I will be working on is the rear brakes of the car, because it's time to get the car out of the garage, because it has been there way too long. I needed it for the level ground for this rear end project. I no longer need it for that, so we can get it out. The rear brakes, I was going to go with a really nice set of Willwoods, and over time and consideration, I realized it was way out of budget. Never meant to spend tons and tons of money on this car, but I really wanted it for, cool Willwoods, but I'm going to go with a much cheaper set. It'll help speed up the process and not spend as much money. Once we get the rear brakes on, I'll just go to the junkyard, grab a junk set of wheels, throw them on there, just enough to roll it out of the garage for now. After the rear brakes, I think in order of what we're going to do is either drive shaft, get that cut down, and that'll let us redo the entire exhaust. I have two 2.5 inch cutoffs that my uncle gave me. They operate off of a remote control receiver, so there's no switch or button inside the car. I'll just have a little remote control on my keychain. And then after that, everything else that needs to be done. If we don't go that route, what we'll end up probably doing is get the plumbing done, get a radiator, get the water pump going, fill it up with coolant, because right now there is none. So if we go that route, that'll allow us to actually let it get up to temp, heat cycle it a couple times, make sure there's no leaks oil-wise or anything like that, and we can get it up to temp and kind of tune down the idle and figure that out. After that, it'd be one of the other couple of things that needs doing. I think the final thing we will ever do to this car, or not ever do, but the final thing we will do to get it running and driving, because I would like to make this thing road legal, is get all the wiring done. I want all the mechanical and everything else put in first, and the last thing will be wiring up the lights, radiator fans, everything else like that. I'm going to probably be going to the current fuse box and just run it through there, just to make it a little bit easier. We might have to change the gauges. We might not have to change the gauges. I'm still indecisive on that one, because the speedometer is definitely not going to be reading correctly at all. So we'll have to figure something out. But we are turning into, as you can see it, Ace Hardware. Best place to get hardware. So we're turning in here now, and we'll be back in a little bit. Alrighty, we are back from the store, getting all the hardware I forgot. I went ahead and threw the housing underneath the car again, and we're going to be installing both axles and putting the flanges on, tightening them down. So for this, all you really need to do is just make sure you have the correct sided axle. They are going to be different lengths, just by a tiny bit. I believe these were 27 3/4 and 25 5/8, if I'm not mistaken. And with this, I forgot the little spacers that go in between the flange and the housing. Put those in there, or else you will bend the flange, as I soon discovered. I don't have any video or pictures, but I have been in since then and reinstalled those properly. And now same exact thing on the right side of the housing. All you gotta do is just slide the axle in. You might have to spin it a little bit to get the splines to line up, but there's really not much to installing the actual axles. Pretty simple. And now we're going to be cutting up and finishing up the flanges on the rear housing. While I'm fumbling around with the notebook trying to look cool, I went ahead and did some pre-cuts, just got some basic measurements going. Just for reference, there's the original flange and the size. So we're going to need the angle grinder and cut these up. So let's grab that. We have the angle grinder now. That's the wrong disc. I need a metal cutting disc. And that is way too big for what we're doing. Got the right sized one. There we go. Alright, let's get to work. So went ahead and just laid out the markings, and we're just going to be slicing them up, cutting them up. I know I have no card on this thing. You've probably seen it in one of the earlier videos, the hood cutting one. When I first put the flanges on, you know, it's fine. If you look at that scar on my right index knuckle, I have been sliced by this thing before. I was using a 40 grit flap disc and did not let it spin down, and I went to go reach over and move the part a little bit in the vise, and I just bumped my knuckle just a tiny bit. And I actually did it again with the next knuckle on that finger, so make sure you're just being careful doing this. Don't do anything stupid. I am wearing eye protection, I'm wearing ear protection, it's loud, it's throwing sparks. Just don't get hurt by using any one of these. If you use one, please use a guard. I'm stupid and I really am stubborn. I don't feel like getting one, so just make sure you're doing the proper PPE and being safe while you're doing this. Alrighty, and with those cut out, we're going to move on to one of the worst parts working on this car. This is the mount for the old suspension. This is just interfering with everything. I can't reuse it. I can't line any of the bolts up. I'm gonna have to cut it out. This took way too long and was very infuriating. The Sawzall could only do so much. Just, you know, it was hitting the frame. You know, it could only reach so far. And the angle grinder was just a little too risky, just with the angles I was having to hold it, where I was having to lay. But we're just going to cut this out. I'm going to cut out a lot of it because it took way too long and we don't need to sit through all of this. So after a lot of cutting and grinding and cleaning and measuring, I ended up getting it in. Yours might be way easier, yours might be way harder. You're just going to have to get in there, measure, and see what you're able to do. I was fortunately able to make this work, which is really nice. In the next couple clips, you'll see the right side completed, and you will see the whole thing completed, fully supporting on its own. It's sitting on the pre-existing shocks. Those will be changed in the future, don't worry. But I'm going to leave you now and just watch the process of me fighting with it. Thank you very much for watching. Please like, subscribe, share, whatever you want to do. Anything really helps, honestly. Just want to do this channel for fun, show some people a dumb kid wanting to work on a car that he probably shouldn't. But yeah, that's really about it. Adios. Stay safe.